Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome back to the Sports Hot Seat. Last week we had DeShields and Marquise Grisson in part one of this two-part series, and they're back once again, Mitch Garber with Mitch Melnick and Delino and Marquise. We left off last week talking about racism in Georgia, where Marquise Grissom grew up, and it brings up the question as to whether or not racism exists today in Major League Baseball. You guys are sort of separated a little bit from the rest of the population. You're the ones that everyone idolizes. You don't fall into the general population. Do you still feel any racism when people look at you, talk to you, treat you? Marquise?
I don't want people coming up to me and shaking my hand and patting me on the back, you know, because I'm a baseball player and because, you know, I'm making money. But if I was an ordinary black person on the street, I know it'd be different. I know that for a fact. And that's the only thing I could say that I don't like about, you know, that situation.
Bob?
That's it. You hit it on the head.
I mean, you know that you have people that come up to you, shake your hand, look at you like this.
Just because you play Major League Baseball.
And they turn around and call blacks niggers the next minute.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it was Reggie Sanders not very long ago out in the outfield was hurled with racial taunts by, I don't want to get the city wrong, blast the city, but I think it was Candlestick Park in San Francisco. The fans out in the bleachers were giving it to him the whole game. And at some point, you guys have heard that. Do you sometimes just want to like grab people by the neck and shake them or throw them up against the wall? I mean, how do you keep deflecting stuff like that?
You can't get physical. I mean, not unless
you know, you feel like doing it. Not that you'd actually do it, but you feel like doing it.
Of course, you get angry, but I mean, you know, you have to be smart too and a little mature about it. I mean, you know, the racism's there. It's always been there. But I'm not looking for a physical confrontation, not unless somebody put their hands on me. You know, then we gotta do what we gotta do.
Not a good idea.
Just saying, you know.
But how do you learn? I mean, do you learn to eventually deflect stuff like that away and say, so what else is new? Or
Yeah, I'll take the attitude if it's not in front of me, or like me and you sitting there talking, and you know, after that, that's it. You know, they can holler from the stands, from a distance or whatever. You know, that's something that I can't control. But if we're sitting right here talking, it'll be you know, pretty much different.
The fans in Montreal, for example, they see Marquise Grissom, number 9, the center fielder with all that talent. They see Delino, number 4, the second baseman with all his talent. What would you like the fans in Montreal to know about you that they can't possibly know by just watching you from 400 feet away?
I want the fans to appreciate, you know, me going out there every day and playing, and I just want them to appreciate my work.
2 hits a day, you told me.
That's what I aim for. I don't mean I'm gonna get 2 hits.
No, but that's your job. Go out and try to get 2 hits a day.
Every day.
Bob, what would you like the fans to know about you? The ones that, I mean, they clap for you, they cheer for you, they love you, but they don't know you.
Just that, you know, I'm true. You know, I try to be myself. And what you see is really what you get. I mean, I'm just me out there.
You guys, either of you think you're intimidating figures at all? The media have jumped on each of you at different times, more on you than on Marquise. Do you feel you're at all intimidating? Do you feel that?
I just think if people are scared of reality, then they might be a little intimidated by me, you know, because I try to be as real as possible.
You like the media? Guys come in the room after every game?
No. The only reason I don't like the media is because these people can say anything basically about us, and we have no way of retaliating.
You're right here?
Yeah, but I'm saying a lot of these people, I mean, a lot of reporters that I see that write about guys being on drugs or having these problems, they got the same problems. They got the exact same problems. And they don't get exposed like they expose other people.
Grip?
No, I don't pay too much attention to the media. I tell them what I have to say, you know, and tell them the truth. And that's that. But, you know, like he said, they put things in the paper. They can turn the whole story around and make it something that it isn't. So that's the only, you know, negative thing that I don't like about it. But, you know, they don't bother me. They have a job to do. I understand that. And they have a family. Try to make a living too. So I just take it as, you know, part of my being in the big leagues or whatever.
I'll steal one of Melnick's questions. He asks it all the time. Do you read what's written about you?
I don't even read the paper too much. You know, that keeps my mind free from worrying about what people said or what he said in the paper, or what I said in the paper, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I don't run out and get the newspaper, you know, or nothing, but if I happen to see one laying around, I check it out, see what they're saying.
If you go 5 for 5 and hit 2 home runs, you go check out the paper?
Sometimes I do, sometimes
You guys
I don't.
watch yourself on TV?
I try to watch myself on TV, just for the simple fact that you can learn a lot by watching yourself. You can see different things that you're doing, and that's basically why I like to watch it.
Here's a steal of home on a was this a busted squeeze?
Yep.
And Moises up at the plate, I think that was a great play.
Yeah, we're going to try to shake something this year.
What do we have him on there for?
Well, this is Pittsburgh. I think this is the game at Pittsburgh last year. It was on ESPN. It was in the middle of a pennant race, and you did everything that night. Right? Is that your best night?
Yeah, had to be. I don't think any player can do too much of anything else. You know, that's just one of those nights where I felt good and everything went my way.
That made the last out.
We saw you get a curtain call out there. You come out and tip your hat. We'll never know that feeling. 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people.
Not
screaming
that
for you.
many, not that many. In that Olympic Stadium, more like 10, 15,000.
That bother you?
Sometimes, but, you know, they're watching the Canadians right now. I understand, you know, hockey first up here.
But you've been there. I mean, there was that great Sunday afternoon last year when you guys were
But
making
it's
a
not
run.
a consistent thing. That's what I'm saying. You know, we go to other ballparks in the States, and there's 30 grand there every night, you know. I mean, don't matter who's there, they're just there.
Used to be like that here.
Yeah,
You guys were in diapers, I think.
yeah.
But it used to be like that.
Were the Expos winning?
Yeah, they came close every year, but they just couldn't get over the hump.
Is Montreal the city that you happen to work in? Or is it a city you really want to work in?
When I happen to work in.
Yeah, because you don't have a choice. I mean, you get drafted and you go play wherever you get
But
drafted.
now that you're here, do you like working here, or you just, this is where you are? And that's it.
That's the way I see it. This is where I am. This is my job in the big leagues. The only thing I don't like about Montreal is the taxes.
That's it?
That's
Bob?
because he's making so much more now.
I didn't
You
like it when I was
recognize
making
it.
the minimum.
Marquise, I always tell my clients, if you're paying a lot of taxes, you're doing all right.
Yeah, but I mean,
Well,
we get penalized, so to speak, for playing up here. That's what he's saying, you know. I mean, a guy making our same salary playing for the Phillies, he's going to bring home more money. Not saying, you know, we make plenty of money. I thank God every day for the money that I'm making, but that's just an example, you know.
There's a I don't know which Delino was that from last year. Which stage was that? You got the little
I'm
go-
smiling, Anna.
You're smiling. There you go.
You must be all right.
Trick photography.
My wife saw you somewhere around the batting cage in some pregame interview or something, and you were smiling. And she says, "What a great smile! How come he doesn't do that more often?"
I just, you know, I got to have something to smile about, really. I'm not just going to walk around just, you know what I mean?
that
Gotta have
ain't him.
something
He's
to
just
smile
fake.
about.
Yeah.
Be faking if he did.
A lot of people don't know you're a pretty funny guy. I think people think you're a pretty quiet guy.
I am.
Are you shy?
Not no more. I used to be. I used to be, when I come on a show like this, I used to be nervous, you know.
Yeah.
And on the radio, I used to be nervous, but now it's like,
That's because he's seen how
just
I
do
handle
it.
That's why we got Bop in here.
Yeah.
We didn't want some frozen center fielder sitting here like,
Nah, them days are over. You know, everybody was like that. I
Next
think,
time we'll have you
know,
alone,
when they
man.
first came up, you know, all players, athletes, entertainers, you know, when they first, you know, being on TV and everything. You was nervous when you first did an interview, wasn't
absolutely.
you? Okay.
First pleaded a trial,
Okay.
walked down the aisle. It
You
rhymes,
were
doesn't
nervous
it?
at your wedding?
Yeah, of course I was. You?
Not at all.
Me either.
I was nervous she'd leave before it got started.
Oh, you should know by then.
Yeah,
You should
well.
know by then.
Anyway, my
Really?
gut feeling was right.
All right, so let's finish this up with baseball talk. Do you mind? baseball and just baseball.
I know what you're getting ready to talk about.
All right.
Go
Well,
ahead.
it's unfortunate because we dealt with this in another show about the business of baseball. Of all the things that were said, and we are going to get to the actual baseball as we see Delino in action last season against the Phillies, slamming one. When we talk about the business of baseball and the arbitration process, of all the things that were said in that room, what was the one phrase, the one word, the one description that angered you the most?
It wasn't just one scripture or whatever. It was just the point that people that they had to use, you know, like my numbers, my stats, and to tell me how good I am. You know, they can't tell me how good I am. I know what type of year I had, and over some money. You know what I'm saying? It didn't have to be done the way that they did it. But it didn't bother me at all because I knew it was a business move, and I knew they had to do what they had to do. They had to downgrade me as much as possible.
They don't
to make
believe what
themselves
they
look
said.
good.
You know, I think you should know, you probably do, that they don't believe what they said in that room. They don't really believe it to knock you down.
I
That's
believe
not
it.
that you believe that they believe that?
Why shouldn't I?
Do you know for sure whether they do?
No, I know. So I don't know. This is what I'm trying to get at, what exactly was said. But that is done in every arbitration hearing, in every ball club, in every organization. And they'll turn around, and if Dan Duquette wants to give a description of Marquise Grissom, he'll talk for the next 5 days about what a great ball player you are.
I can confidently tell you that they didn't mean it. And Bob's right when he says, do you know for a fact? And the answer is no. But having been involved in so many negotiations, hey, the whole key is we got to walk in there and say why we shouldn't pay Marquise this much. We want him, but we don't want to pay him anymore. It's a business. We'd rather pay him 2 than 3.
I understand that
2.5
too.
and 3.5. They can't possibly mean it. They know how good you are. They know who. I mean, if they think that of you, then they would be the only ones who would think that of you. You got to think. You got to realize that. Everyone else in the whole world of baseball, fans, media, and players included, know that it's not true. But you said to Mitch just earlier, you said it didn't bother me at all. Now, if it didn't bother you at all, you know, then I'm lost at why we're talking about it, because the whole premise was that it bothered you a lot.
I'm here playing.
You sure are.
I'm happy.
Did it bother you, Delino, that that whole incident happened with Marquise? Yours was just settled before going to arbitration. And I remember sitting on this show saying, I hope they don't go to arbitration with either one because of that very reason. But after the arbitration, we sat here with Terry Haig and Jeff Blair of the Montreal Gazette, and I said, hey, Marquise has got to realize this is business. This is nothing. He should just walk away from that hearing, and that should be the end of
And
it.
I did.
And you did.
And I did.
Yeah, but it's still there.
Nah.
No, I mean,
Every
it's
time.
still
You know
here.
what I'm saying? It's going to stay in the back of my mind. You know, it's going to stay there. But the thing about it, you know, people keep bringing it up. It's dead in my
Okay, because the
opinion,
only
so.
reason people keep bringing up is people are a little concerned that at some point when you have the opportunity to write your own ticket, that will be a factor. That if they don't lock you up, for example, in a long-term deal, that you'll say the closer you get to become eligible to test the market, the more tempting it is for you, and your thought process will go back to that arbitration hearing and
Be
say, why
like-
should I give them a break anyway?
It's gonna be like it's just business, fellas. You know,
Yeah.
I was taught that you treat people the way you want to be treated, or you treat people how they treat you, or whatever. You know.
I'll tell you, I'll say
And-
something very unpopular with the Montreal Expos, and that is if they don't lock these two guys up in the long term, they deserve to lose them both. Say
Well,
the
there's
same
a-
thing for,
well,
for
there's-
Larry Walker.
Moises.
Moises Alou. They don't lock them up
Wetland,
long term, they
Rojas.
deserve to lose them all.
You guys know what the Cleveland Indians are doing?
Now that was a good gesture. I mean, personally speaking, that showed me that they're really committed to those guys and trying to do something good in that city. But you know,
It wouldn't make you play any better, though.
no. But it's just the idea of just keeping your ball club together, and that doesn't happen a lot now in sports. You know, guys are switching teams and this, that, and the other. And I would like to see us keep our team together. And that's what it's all about.
For the benefit of the fans who don't know, the Cleveland Indians have basically locked up the core of their talent, their young talent, for years with multi-year contracts, and a lot of people in fact, even members of the Players Association aren't thrilled about it because they feel they've given up some money for security. But when you get into the millions, at what point does money stop mattering? I mean, do you have a figure in your head? Well, geez, I think 3 million's enough, or 4 million, or 6 million, because you know how money can work. You know what greed is. You know what temptation is.
Yeah.
I think Bonds showed that when you get up that high, you choose the city you want to be in. Pretty much, why not? I mean, you're talking about 13 million or 13.5 or 14 million. Then you start thinking about where you want to live and raise your kids.
I think that's important too.
Where to live and raise your kids,
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah, at some point, the money is not that important. You know, I mean, you make enough that you can walk away from the game and be fine. But like he said, you know, it's more about where you want to end your career, this, that, and the other. You know.
But what about, you know, there are some athletes in every sport, Ricky Henderson in baseball, for example, and this is where fans have a hard time dealing with a lot of today's athletes who make a lot of money, is a guy will sign a contract and then find out what so-and-so on his team or so-and-so in the same position is making, and he thinks he deserves more, and after signing a contract for $3 million, which a lot of fans just cannot relate to, complains about it.
I don't agree with that. I think if you sign, you know, you play for what you signed for, regardless of what happens, you know.
That's the market. That was the market at the time. You know, it changes every year. And he signed a 3-year deal for whatever. I'm pretty much sure he felt that he was secure at that time. But the next year it changed.
Do you see fans getting angrier a lot more quickly these days because of the money you guys make? Do you think that's a factor?
That's the first thing they bring up.
But I think, I think it's not the money. I think it's who's making the money.
Well, I think what Mitch means is when a guy's making $2-3 million a year, he goes 0 for 4. You know, your average fan's gonna go $3 million a year. Walk out of the stadium and go home and keep talking about it in the car. $3 million a year, 0 for 4. This guy's a choker.
But once again, like I said, I don't think it's the money, so
What
to
do you mean?
speak.
What do you mean?
Just like, I mean, every time I watch the news or something, and they talk about Barry Bonds, you know, the $7 million man, this, that, and the other, but you don't hear that about Ryan Sandberg. And he's making
Same thing.
$6 million. So I think it's who's making the money and not the money necessarily.
So there's a double standard at work here.
Yes.
Back into topic 1.
Let's shift gears into topic 3. Are you confident, in spite of what happened at the arbitration table, that basically this team, the Montreal Expos, will, in the immediate future, stay together?
I don't know. I wouldn't mind staying here and playing here, but I don't know. The way things going, you can get traded. Jose Canseco got traded. You know, Ruben Sierra, and it's pretty much, it's going to take a lot of loyalty and a lot of other things from the front office and to make those commitments to sign people to long-term deals. So on my end, I'm not worried about it at all. I just want to continue to play and stay healthy.
What about some of the other factors at work here? Management, the manager, coaching staff? Do you like what's happening?
Yeah, we have, everything's falling into place. You know, as far as I'm concerned, we're on the verge of being a really, really good ball club. So it's just a matter of keeping the guys here now.
Dan Duquette has talked about the Dallas Cowboys, about how young the Expos are, and he said the Cowboys, the youngest team in the NFL, won the Super Bowl, and we have guys who are ready to lead, who have been here a few years. DeShields, Marquise Grisson, Larry Walker. Can you guys do it, or would you prefer to have somebody else around who's been around for a while to lean on a little bit for guidance?
I think we can hold our own. I think we can hold our own.
Are you happy in that role, though? I mean, you got some young guys on this team.
But we
you
don't-
got
we
Mike
don't-
Lansing's 2 lockers away from you in the dressing room.
But we don't look at ourselves like that. I mean, you know, we're all on the same level pretty much. We don't look at myself as being the leader of the club or him being the leader or Larry or whatever. You know, we're all 26, 27, 24. So we just go out there and do our thing.
But you don't take the initiative to approach Lansing about stuff that you've experienced 3 years ago that maybe you could help him out with a little bit. And you came up here, you were raw. Now he's raw. Someone must have helped you. Did anyone on the Expos help you when you first got up here?
Well, I had a Tim Raines, I had an Old Can, I had Wallace Johnson, Otis Nixon, you know, veterans.
But you're prepared to be someone else's reins and oil can now?
Yeah, but these
if
guys are a
needed.
lot younger than those guys
But
were when they came
they're
up.
the reins and oil can of this team. They're the experienced
But a
ball
younger-
players of
much
this team.
younger
Larry Walker,
versions.
Marquise, Delino DeShields, and Dennis.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna be myself. You know, I'm gonna go out there and play my game and do what I've been doing. You know, if somebody wants to talk about something, I sit down and talk with you, but at the same time, you gotta be a man, you know? You gotta be a man out there.
What, did you guys have anything to learn still about baseball? at the major league level?
Plenty.
Like what?
Everything. You just never stop learning. As far as baseball concerned, you go out there and you try to learn the pitchers and what the team's trying to do to you each and every time because they're going to switch it up on you. You know, every time they figure out what you're hitting, then the next game they coming right at you. So you can never stop learning the game of baseball, I don't think.
Speaking of learning, you had Lou Brock at spring training, giving you some tips, I guess, and just discussing base stealing. I said to Lou Brock at spring training, I said,
He's laughing already.
you want to tell me what's so funny before I finish the question?
Go ahead.
All right. I just asked Lou Brock if Marquise asked him any questions that only a great base stealer would ask. And he just looked at me like this. Oh, yeah. Was it helpful to talk to Lou Brock?
Yeah, very helpful. He know base stealing. He's so smart. He's up here, and he knows another level of base stealing, which we talked about, and me and him, neither one of us wanted to get into it. So it was like, no, we'll just stick to what we're doing, and we'll stick to what we're doing, and maybe we'll get to that level, next couple of
Is
years.
he too technical, you mean? From a technical standpoint?
The
The theory?
Yeah, the theory is kind of tough.
Heavy.
It's
The power
not a
step he talks about?
memory. Nah, it's beyond that. It's
It's like physics.
yeah, it's up there. But I don't want to discuss it because I'm gonna save it for later on in my career or something.
As far as base
When you
stealing,
slow down?
Yeah.
as far as
I'm
base
Davis.
stealing is concerned, would you consider, if you had to compare one to the other, you'd be the speed merchant, you'd be like the sneaky base stealer? You're sneaky. You're sneakier than fast. If you had to compare yourself to Marquise, would that be accurate?
Well, he outruns the ball a lot of times, I look at him, and I'm like, man, he didn't get a good jump right there. In the last 4 or 5 steps, he just outruns the ball, whereas I got to do everything right. I can't not get a good jump and be safe. If I don't get a good jump, I'm gonna be out.
You talked about in the last show maturing a little bit. Your problems with umpires, is that part of it? Because you're still getting, one of my pet peeves in baseball is major league umpires. The old saying is 90% of the time they get the call right, and yet on the bang-bang plays, you check the replay, I think 90% of the time they get the call wrong. As base stealers, I mean, you've both been victims of the ball maybe beating you guys there, but the tag not being applied in time. Can you say anything without them getting back at you at some point? I mean,
Nope. Best they can do is just
He found
take
that
the
out.
call and go on back to the dugout.
there's no doubt in your mind, is there, that the umpires had it in for you that one year, that they were testing you, they were pushing you?
I think, I don't think, I know, but I had a lot to do with that too. I'm not gonna just point my finger and say it was all them, but it was a little battle going on there though.
Mm-hmm.
Do you talk to them at all anymore?
Some of them.
Do you talk to opposing players? You get on first base, do you talk to the first baseman?
Yeah.
You too?
He's not there fast enough.
All the teams.
Long enough.
Long enough, sorry. Yes.
Try not to be.
Yeah. Do you got a favorite? Do you have a favorite ball player? Now, today?
I do. My favorite player is Barry Bonds in baseball. I mean, I think he's the Michael Jordan of baseball.
What specifically about Bonds that impresses you the most? What
Well,
makes you shake your head when you watch him play?
because he
He hit.
delivers. Yeah, it's like Michael. And now that he sets such high standards, people expect him just to be out of this world every year. I mean, you don't win back-to-back MVPs by doing nothing. I mean, this guy is a great ball player.
Why do fans seem to hate Barry Bonds and love Michael Jordan?
Well, I don't know. You have to take a survey or something. I don't know.
You hear negative stuff about Bonds all the time.
Well, Bonds has got this. He's certainly got an attitude, and he doesn't. He's got a love-hate relationship with a lot of members of the media, certainly. But I also think what Delino said earlier about Ryan Sandberg is that there is a double standard. They'll describe a black ball player a certain way. I think it was Reggie Jackson who said a black is referred to as arrogant and a problem child, and a white guy is aggressive and cocky, is how he put it.
You guys changing all that, both of you.
I'm just gonna be myself. You know, that's all I can do. I'm not gonna go out there and try to be something that I'm not. You know, I'm gonna just be Bop.
Is the fact that Felipe Alou is Dominican, is a minority manager, Don Baylor, Afro-American manager, is that a positive for you?
Not for me. I mean, we're represented well on the field, but you know, I'm looking more into owning a ball club maybe, and just, you know, running the ball club, running the whole thing. You know, I think until that happens, you know, we're still gonna just be treading water.
Well, I asked you last week, do you think things are getting better? And you said no. Do you not think that things are getting closer to black ownership in professional sports?
Until that happens, it's not gonna be better. You know, because
You want to own a ball club?
yeah, I want to see minorities owning the ball club, running the ball club, calling the shots, firing people, hiring people, trading people. That's what I want to see.
Would you hire him?
Oh yeah.
As
You got a job?
I got
if you own the ball club,
base running instructor?
What would Marquise be?
GM.
Yeah,
Hey,
GM.
that's not asking you, I'm asking him.
I'm telling you, GM.
No, I'd give him a job where he could just sit on his butt and just sit back and make $100 grand.
So
or
you'd be a
whatever.
GM and you'd have to go to take some of your players to arbitration, say really nasty things about them,
Yeah,
even
I
though you
sure
didn't
would.
mean it.
I'll get him. I'll stick it to him. Nah, I wouldn't
You know
do
what to
that.
say.
Yes, you're right about that.
Have you got this mapped out a little bit in your mind, like how long you want to play and how long it'll take you to be in a position to accumulate that kind of money? And
What, to own a ball club?
yeah.
50 years at this present salary.
Yeah. Nah, I mean,
Well, what you would obviously wouldn't be the sole owner,
right.
but if you can get a group together and
I like
well,
that.
who's doing it in the
NBA?
NBA?
You got me.
They tried.
Yeah.
Walter Payton's trying to get a
Walter
football.
Payton's trying to get a
Payton in
football team.
football,
Magic
that's right.
Johnson's one. Well,
Yeah.
Magic Johnson, had he not been HIV positive, I think was right on track to own a major league, a National Basketball Association team. That was no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll happen. But I think what maybe what DeLino means, I don't want to quote you, is it's too bad you have to be a pro athlete to make all that money to do it. Should be black lawyers, black businessmen from all walks.
There's definitely people in the community that have that kind of money, but I don't know, they're just not interested right now, I guess.
Well,
But that's the thing.
we appreciate it.
All right.
That was great. Marquise
Thanks for
Grissom,
coming in, guys.
DeLino DeShields. We'll be back.
Um,
We'll be back next week on another edition of the Sports Hot Seat. This has been the second part of a two-part series with Marquise Grissom and DeLino DeShields. Get out to the Olympic Stadium anytime you have a chance. Make sure the Expos are in town before you go out there, mind you. It's fun. 93 is going to be a big year. These two guys are going to give you definitely your money's worth and a whole lot more. For Mitch Melnick, I'm Mitch Garber. We'll catch you next time on the Hot Seat.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear. Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Plaza Lexus Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.
Welcome to the Sports Hot Seat. I'm Mitch Garber with Mitch Melnick. 1993 is the 25-year anniversary of the Montreal Expos. And Mitch, we've got a couple of guys and some video clips that'll show us the entire 25-year history of this team.
Two gentlemen, Mitch, who have been here since day one following the Montreal Expos. One, like me, as a fan, Elliot Price, who calls the games now along with Morning Sports on CIQC Radio. And the president of the Montreal chapter, the Baseball Writers Association of America, Mr. Ian MacDonald of the Montreal Gazette. Ian, Elliot. Elliot, welcome back. Ian, welcome for the first time.
He gets Mr. Ian MacDonald. I'm just Elliot.
Hey.
Okay.
Elliot Price is the first return guest to the Sports Hot Seat. And Ian MacDonald, I might add, before we get going on the 25-year anniversary, is also the defending champion of the Media Rotisserie Baseball League.
Along with Brody Snyder, yes. Co-defending champion.
Good general manager, yeah.
Yes, and also the only guest allowed to have styrofoam cups of coffee while we do the show. This is the first. Where were you in 1968, in May of 1968, when the city of Montreal announced that we got our baseball team?
I was working at the Star at the time, Mitch, and I think I was in the office doing something or other, and I remember there was a great deal of excitement at that time, and of course it was the anticipation of Major League Baseball. I think even more so than the fact that Montreal had a team and you're going to have a bunch of players to learn all about and to cheer for on your own team. It was the fun was the fact that you're going to be able to see all these other players come in with the different teams. You know, it opened up a whole new avenue for sports fans, and for, as you point out, Elliot was a fan at that stage, and of course I was a worker, and there should be a difference, and it was great fun for us too to see all these people come in.
Everybody was a fan in '69.
Oh, I wouldn't say that, Mitch. What are you talking about? Not in the media. There were some fans, and there still are, I guess.
But I mean, you were a baseball fan in '69.
I was a sports reporter, and yes, I was in the business. I'll tell you one of the fun points about those early years. Gene Mauch was a very well-known and a very well-respected manager at the time. A lot of people harp on the fact that he never really won, but he was acknowledged as one of the best managers. But as far as the media was concerned, you know, he did a tremendous job there too, as far as teaching all of us. And I tell you, there was a lot of teaching needed for the media about just how Major League Baseball worked, and teaching us all about players and the ins and outs of the game. So that was a great experience for the first 2-3 years.
We're taking a look at scenes from the opening news conference, and there is the little general. Elliot Price has got a very well-known dad among people who have been regulars at Jerry Park and Olympic Stadium. Manush, named after the old ball player Jaime Manush. Was your dad, Jerry Price, a Gene Mauch fan? Did he blast Mauch, or was he a fan of Gene Mauch?
No, he's the guy that continually points out that Mauch never won anything. He wasn't a great fan of Gene Mauch as a major league manager to be a winner. He was a fan of Gene Mauch as far as a guy who could develop players and have an opportunity to send them on. He thought that Gene Mauch should have been a minor league manager or someone in charge of minor league players, although Mauch had a pretty good run. He just never won anything.
I remember Mauch being criticized after being here for a while. Not remembering Mauch arriving here. Was Mauch not welcomed here right off the bat? Was he criticized by anybody upon his arrival?
I don't think so. He was pretty tough, and it was facade with him too. He liked that reputation of being a tough guy, but once you got to know him, no, he loved to talk baseball. He thought baseball the whole time, and he couldn't really comprehend people who didn't take it that seriously. But and I disagree that he wasn't a good manager. He didn't win. Are you kidding me? He got more wins out of some very, very poor ball clubs than anyone could possibly expect. I mean, the Expos nearly won the whole darn thing, you know, in 1973, and with a ball club that simply didn't belong in there. No, he was a very good manager.
How were Montreal baseball fans in 1969? Did they have to be taught the game of baseball from scratch? I mean, baseball is a rich tradition in Montreal, but Major League Baseball arriving here must have drawn a lot of people that didn't know anything at all about baseball.
Yeah, you know, there was an awful lot of baseball here, though. Quebec has a tremendous history of minor baseball, not just junior, not the amateur stuff we're talking about. There was semi-pro ball, and several organizations had teams all throughout the province: Three Rivers, Sherbrooke, Drummondville, Quebec, Thetford Mines. There was a lot of baseball. So the fans knew about baseball, and they wanted to see these big names. Just like I mentioned before, that was a great deal of fun. I think the media are the people who had to be taught more about it, and Gene Mauch did an excellent job.
How was he generally with the media the early years after a game or around the batting cage and so on? And did his relationship with the media change as the years went on, as you went through the pennant race of '73 and then on to '74 and then the phase 2 of '75?
I think Gene tended to lose his patience a little bit. At the beginning, he was almost understanding that the media didn't know a whole lot about it, and he would explain things and try and talk to them. But as it went on, a few more years later, he became impatient with what he perceived to be silly questions, and of course many of them were. And you know, I still believe that Gene should have had another year or two with this ball club, you know, when they finally went through into phase 2 or whatever it was called at that particular time, and he had pressure from above to play a lot of the young players, even though he would rather have gone with experience. But he did play a lot of the young players, and the next thing he was turfed, and they brought in a young manager to go with the young players, and they really hit bottom, you know. So I think if Gene had had a couple more years with that thing, he might have been there when they hit the good stretch a little bit later.
Elliot, you mentioned on the last time you were on the Sports Hot Seat that you dreamed for a long time of being a play-by-play man for the Montreal Expos, or at least a Major League Baseball play-by-play guy. Is it safe to say that if not for the Expos coming to Montreal in '69, you may not have chosen this career route?
That's a real good possibility. I mean, hockey was everything that we had as far as Montreal was concerned. We had the Alouettes as well, but the Canadians were the ones that had the tradition, the ones that I'd be on the floor with the hockey cards and tape the nets to the floor, and the baseball players were from the United States. They were from somewhere else. They didn't come here. So we really didn't get an opportunity to see them up close, and that's something Ian mentioned, an opportunity to see the Lou Brocks of this world, and he was the first hitter ever to step up to the plate at Jarry Park in Canada. But guys like that, an opportunity to see them up close, at least gave us an idea of what Major League Baseball is all about, being in the park and going as often as you could and seeing the game.
Who was your favorite of the early years? Let's say the Gene Mauch years, '69 through '75, before the young kids arrived. Did you have a favorite from that era?
Probably Steve Renko.
Steve Renko?
Yeah, he was...
Lurch.
I liked him as much for the fact that Gene batted him 7th once, and
right.
I liked that. I liked the fact that the pitcher could hit the ball, and Renko was a pretty good hitter. He was first baseman in the Mets system at one point, and they turned him into a pitcher, and the Expos made the trade. And he had some good years as a pitcher too, but he could hit the ball.
Ian, did you have? I'm not gonna say did you have a favorite ball player. I wouldn't dare ask you that
Not a
kind
fan,
of question.
you know that.
No, but as someone from a working relationship that you had with players, did you develop a stronger one with one player than another?
I don't know. I got to know Ron fairly well, and Rusty was a lot of fun. Bob Bailey was a really good fellow. No, there were a bunch of pretty good guys through that era, but you're right. I didn't really get too close to too many of them.
Do you have any particular stories, maybe from the road, from the early years, involving some of those guys?
Boy, it's been so many years, Mitch. I forget a lot of that stuff.
Oh, you've forgotten more than we'll know, right?
I have to sit down and think it out a bit.
All-time favorite Expo, Ian, in terms of who you think the best Expo was, not your favorite personality, favorite person. Best Montreal Expo in the last 25 years.
Well, I don't know. I think Andre Dawson would be very close to that. Perhaps it's because you'd see him going through the hard work and the pain that he endured for all those years with his knees and everything, but he still got himself ready every single day and went out and played as hard as he could every day. I think he'd be right near the top.
Elliot, once you have 25 years, you get to ask these questions now. Who was the best, of all time for this team? 25 years, not a short period of time. Best Expo of all time.
I got to agree with Ian. Andre Dawson first of all, he did everything. He could run, he could hit with power, he could play defense, and he could throw. And he was also a really nice man, and still is. The Boston Red Sox, and it's a shame that either there's not interleague play or that Dawson's no longer in the National League because we don't have an opportunity to see him now. But for many reasons, I think Andre Dawson.
He was a great example for other players, too, on and off the field. You often hear about managers and coaches liking to have a certain player around so other players can look at them and see the way he operates and everything else. The Expos have some of those people this year. Dennis Martinez is getting off to a slow start, and he's known for talking too much and things like that. But to watch his work ethic is just tremendous, and people like to point that. They like to point that out to other young ball players. They can all learn from that. Well, you could learn from Andre Dawson all the way.
And you see the Red Sox are off to a good start, and a lot of people are pointing in that direction for some of the things that he's brought to the clubhouse. Never mind what the numbers say up on the board, but Andre Dawson's presence in a clubhouse really does mean something.
Ian, what's your take on the Dawson-Carter feud and how that may have affected the team in the 1980s?
I think too much is made out of a lot of these things. They were totally different personalities. Gary loved to be up front and be in the limelight all the time and in the spotlight. Dawson just went about his business and did things. And I think perhaps there might have a little jealousy might have grown out of that situation for a while when Dawson would not be recognized properly. But I don't know if it was really a feud, and I certainly don't know if that hurt the team too much.
25 years, I mentioned earlier, is a long time. Sometimes you get the impression that 25 years, that this team's still in its infancy stage. How successful do you think this team has been, if you have to now categorize their success in their first quarter century of play? Only 13 teams have won the World Series in the last 25 years. So there's still half the teams in Major League Baseball that haven't done so since the Expos have come into the league.
And there's a lot of teams that haven't won for a whole lot longer than that. The Expos came close. As the case in all sports, there's not really much sense in coming close if you don't go all the way, because there's no guarantee you're going to be there the next time. So many fans think that once a team comes second, or as with this current edition, I'm afraid a whole lot of people feel that just because the Expos had a very good last 5 months or last year, that they're automatically going to be a favorite or something this year, and it doesn't work that way. When you have a good season, you have to grab it. So the Expos should have grabbed it in either 79, 80, or 81. They were right there. Maybe those chances don't come around again, but they certainly were a very top team through that 3-year period. I think they've been a successful franchise. They went through a bad period a few years ago for a variety of reasons. They've got a young team now with a lot of exciting young players, and I'd say they're doing very well.
Elliot, late 70s, early 80s, early 90s, this team has been as well stacked as almost any other team in the National League. Have they been a successful franchise in your view over the first 25?
I think so. I think it really hurt them not to win in any of those years when they had the opportunity, 79, 80, 81, 87, 89, because you can live off a World Series victory for a few years after. You look at how attendance goes, and you don't usually draw your big attendance in the year that you win. You end up with your big attendance the year after. So I think it hurt them a little bit, but if you can contend in the 70s, and they contended a couple times in the 80s, and they're contending right now in the 90s, you'd have to say that, yeah, they're a successful operation.
Before we talk about some of the other managers the Expos have had, I want to get back to this Carter-Dawson thing, Ian. You talked about that there probably was some jealousy because Carter may have hogged the spotlight, and that's my term, not yours. But how much do you think the media has to blame for that? Gary was so accessible.
Well,
don't you think if the media had sought out Dawson a little more instead of just getting an easy quote from Carter?
Yeah, well, okay. Well, I can probably answer that in terms of our end of the media more so than I can with you people. You know more about that. We're all working, all the newspaper guys are working under very strict deadlines. So they have limited time to go down to a clubhouse, for instance, and talk to people and get their job done. It's very, very tough. You run down there and run back up. You used to go down in the clubhouse. I remember through an era when the Expos had those contending teams. They had a lot of young pitchers, the Gullickson, the Sanderson, and even Charlie Lee and people like that, who often were a little bit shy or whatever it was, and they wouldn't come out of the clubhouse. Gary Carter was always there. Gary Carter was available. Gary Carter very often, he wasn't shy to use the I word. He talked about himself, but more than that, he talked about everything. So that made an easy interview. It helped you get your job done, and Gary Carter was always being mentioned. So I think sometimes some players worried about that. Was that the media's fault? I don't know. It helped. They had to do a job, and he helped us.
And Andre Dawson, not because he wanted to not meet the media, very often had no choice to be on the trainer's room.
You're right. He often, every game, before the game and after the game, he had to be in there for 20 minutes or half an hour, and often that's just too late for the guys to wait.
All right, now this team hasn't won a World Series, but they've had some of the more high-profile managers in the 25 years. We saw Gene Mauch. Then there was the Dick Williams era following the mistake of Carl Keel. Dick Williams came with some pretty impressive credentials, kind of acerbic and can be intimidating, I guess, for young people in the media at times. How did you find Dick Williams?
I got on well with him. He was pretty fair, and he did a good job. I think something that's often overlooked over that era too, Mitch, is that I forget, was it during the '78 season or whatever it was, when John McHale decided that he had to do more to help the team on the field. Through the first 8 or 10 years, you remember, this was a brand new operation. Major League Baseball was new in Canada, and John McHale had to spend an awful lot of time getting the organization going and dealing with all the problems that were involved there, including working with the RIO people at the stadium and everything else. In '78, he started spending more time with on the field, and he put a pretty good team together. And so he had a lot to do with the success of the '79, '80, and '81 teams.
Elliot, the '79 team, in your mind, the best ever?
I think so. You had a good young nucleus of players, the Larry Parishes, Gary Carters, Andre Dawsons, good young pitching staff. The Expos seemed to be able to put together the pitching staffs through the years, and that ball club looked like it was ascending, and that sooner or later that they were going to get through. And of course, each year, '79, '80, '81, it was another team that would finish in front of them. And was
Well,
that
they won
Mike
in-
Schmidt
they won
again, or
Schmidt.
Rick Monday?
That was
Which
Mick
one
Schmidt.
was
Rick
it?
Monday's
Rick
coming.
Monday's coming.
That was Osh Schmidt Day at Olympic Stadium.
They won enough games to win a
Absolutely.
division championship
Any of those
in
3
several years. Yeah.
Hey, in '82 and '83, they could have won too. They're
Ian-
right there.
Ian, when you look at this team, the current 1993 edition, the 25-year anniversary edition, are you reminded back of some of the earlier editions of this team? You have those young talents that probably in 25 years, whoever's doing a show like this one will look back and say, who's the greatest of all time? They could say Larry Walker, it could be Delino, it could be Marquise, it could be Dennis.
The difference was that some of the key players in those teams were veterans, and veterans who had proved themselves. The Expos key players right now are still very young men. I mean, Larry Walker, Delino DeShields, Marquise Grisson. You could put Moises in that category, I guess. You got 4 players who are very, very good ball players, potential superstars, but they haven't done it yet. They're on their ascendancy. The difference with those teams in the '79 and '80s, they had some real. They had Tony Perez, and they had some solid Dave Cash veterans and experience that helped the younger players at that time.
Well, that brings up another big difference in baseball over the last 25 years, and that's how the business of baseball has changed. You talk about these young players like Delino and Marquise and Larry Walker, very possibly will play their best years outside of Montreal. Maybe not all 3 of them, but possibly 2 out of the 3 of them. How has the business of baseball really changed from a reporter's point of view, having covered the team from then to now?
Well, I don't know if
Arbitration, so many different aspects to cover than there were then.
Yeah, well, covering all that money stuff and the labor problems takes a lot of the fun out of the game, for sure. As far as our end of it is concerned, it's just, maybe it's because it's too complicated, and certainly the money is beyond most of our comprehension. You know, and it doesn't. It's not nearly as much fun. If you could just talk about about the athletes and their skills and what they're doing, it would be a lot more fun. This team presents, I think, a very interesting challenge. This team this year, getting back to that, because of the fact that, as we pointed out, they have 4 players who are certainly up on a high level, and you walk in with the other half of your starting 8, all question marks, really. Will Cordero has got great potential and everything else, but he still started the season with 120 or 130 at bats, so you don't know about it. And third base is wide open, first base is wide open, and the catching hasn't really got much to go by yet.
Elliot?
Well, getting back to the first question you asked, Ian, I think the disappointing part of perhaps having to cover that end is that the sports page was the place you used to turn to get away from all that other stuff, and now it's a part of it, so you know that baseball is a business. I think the National League East is wide open, though. You know, you have a veteran team like the Philadelphia Phillies, and one thing that's in their favor is the fact that they have a veteran ball club there, and they seem pretty set at all their positions in their starting rotation and with Mitch Williams in the bullpen, but they also have a team that has the capability of getting hurt. Guys that have been hurt in the past, and Dalton and Dykstra and Kruk and that pitching staff. So I think if they don't get hurt, they're going to be a lot of trouble.
We had Gene Mauch, we had Dick Williams. You had the 5-year cycle of the team of the 80s that never came to anything. And then you had Buck Rogers come in. Buck Rogers will maintain that he squeezed every last ounce of the team that he could get out of it. And Dave Dombrowski and others will say that Buck Rogers should have won in 1989. And that he's as much to blame as any other factor in 1989. Ian and Elliot, what do you make of that?
I go along with the first theory that what you claim that Buck said, that he got the most out of what he had. I really thought he did. Buck moved guy. I mean, look at the year he got out of Casey Candell one year, for instance. He had some guys furious that that this little Casey was playing instead of them and doing that, and he got a great season out of him, whatever year that was. I forget now, but
87.
Okay, and that turned out to be a very good year, and I think he got a lot of mileage out of the talent that he had.
Yeah, there were times with Buck Rogers that you'd go to spring training and you'd see the list of pitchers that Buck would have to deal with, the cast of thousands, and somehow Buck and Larry Bernarth would put together a pitching staff, and inevitably the pitching staff would turn out well and help carry the ball club with names that you wouldn't have believed would help the ball club out. Let's go back to Dennis Martinez. I mean, here was a guy that was pretty much finished. He had an ERA of over 5, 3 years in a row with the Orioles, and now he's putting together the best years of his career.
Okay, so who would it be? As we also saw a shot of Terry Hagan there. Manages to pop up all over the place, like that old guy on Saturday Night Live, you know.
Was it a spare part that he had in there?
Or the guy
extra?
with the hair, the rainbow hair that used to show up. All the
John,
John
he's in
317.
jail now. He's in jail.
It's that hairdo.
25 years, all-time manager of the franchise. If you had to make a choice, who would it be?
Bill Verdon. Oh, sorry, I'll let Ian take it. That's, you left him out
All-time
there,
best
right?
manager, I think.
Oh.
I don't know. I would go between Buck and Gene Mauch. I really think Gene Mauch got so much out of players that simply weren't major league caliber players. A great deal of them, and then.
Let me throw this at you then. If Gene Mauch had the team of the 80s,
I think he would have taken him there. I think I said earlier, I think if they'd kept Gene Mauch around just a couple of years longer, he would have been part of that. If other things had worked out the same way, but this you never know. After the disaster that happened with the Keel, perhaps that's what prompted John to decide he had to take a more active interest in it and go out and get some players for the team. No, I think Gene Mauch would have taken them.
Elliot? Manager.
It's tough for me to say because, of course, I didn't cover Gene Mauch or Dick Williams. I like Buck very much, and I thought that he squeezed, as you said, as much as he could out of the talent that he had. It would have been nice for Gene Mauch to have an opportunity to prove that he could win with a good ball club here in Montreal because, of course, he never had one. And to do whatever he did with that 73 team was a miracle. And I think proof that if you can do something with that, give me something to work with and I'll do something with it.
Is there a trend right now, you think, with the Expos? Their last two managers have been the most likable and well-respected managers maybe that they've had. Nobody hated Buck. Nobody hates Felipe Alou, certainly. And when you think back and talk about Dick Williams, Bill Verdon, Gene Mauch, you're going to always have half the people on one side and half on the other side. Maybe there's some realization that you can have a nice guy, well-respected guy who everyone likes who can get a lot out of his ball players.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any reason to live by that theory that nice guys finish last. It's quite possible to win like that.
We're running short, and we want to get into the Blue Monday.
The Blue Era.
Yes, the Blue Monday, the low light of the Expos' 25 years. Were you at the park that day?
Yeah.
What do you remember about that day? What stands out, aside from the
Aside
home
from
run
the weather.
itself? Yeah, the weather.
Well, funny, we've just been kidding about getting close to ball players and getting to know them and everything else. I felt very, very sorry for Steve Rogers, quite frankly, because I'll bet you to this day, a lot of people forget the tremendous 6 weeks that Steve Rogers pitched leading up to that game. It was incredible. From maybe the 10th of September on, he had a stretch where he pitched as well as any pitcher in baseball may have pitched. He won crucial game after crucial game. He kept them in the whole way. He pitched tremendously in the playoffs. He beat Steve Carlton twice in the series leading up to there. And it was just tough that he was brought in to relieve, which it wasn't his regular format, and he gave up a home run ball.
What was the press box like that day, though? Monday hits the home run out. Is it objectivity and let's go down to the room and cover this story, or was it like,
We're not going to New York.
There were a lot of people, of course. There were a lot of fans in the press box too, more than there should be. But so a lot of those people were really disappointed.
Okay, here we go. We're slowing it down.
why?
To add to the misery.
Why are
Elliot,
we
you weren't
slowing it
here.
down?
You weren't in Montreal, right?
No, I was at a radio station in New Brunswick, and I had been given an option by my dad. I could have tickets for the World Series or for the playoffs, and I was given an option by the radio station where I worked at that I could take a week's vacation whenever. So I decided I'd come and watch the World Series, and I guess they didn't play that here, did they, in '81?
Ian,
Maybe it was better not to be
as
there.
the years go on, the legend grows, and some stories that were deemed to be accurate back then. There was some dispute, for example, about Reardon. Was he healthy enough to pitch that day? He claims he was. Fanning claimed he wasn't. That day in particular, was there much discussion about Rogers and why not Reardon, or Bill Lee was out there, or whatever?
Well, yeah, there were a lot of questions asked, and I think at the time the first thing was that everyone took for fact that the word that Reardon wasn't ready to pitch, but anyway, Rogers was so much your best pitcher at that time. It just seemed like a good move.
He strikes him out. He's a genius.
Yeah.
Hits the home run, and we talk about it how many years later now? 12.
Oh, I thought so too. I thought that when Reardon wasn't available, and that's the impression we got from watching the television broadcast, that Rogers would be the perfect guy to come into the game. I know you don't agree with me, Mitch, but I thought that was the right move as well. I was happy to see him in the game.
Okay, can you think of a highlight, not a low light, one moment in Expos history that's positive?
Wallace Johnson, you win a division. What could be more exciting than that? Johnson triples in the winning run, and Cromartie runs around the field with the Canadian flag.
I think probably Bill Stoneman's no-hitters. They were just great moments in
I stand
in
corrected.
Ian
Dennis's
MacDonald.
perfect game
Dennis's
in LA.
perfect game, yeah. Okay.
Ian MacDonald, you can read him every day in the Montreal Gazette. Elliot Price every morning on the Joe Cannon Show on CIQC 600. Mitch Melnick on The Drive from 4 to 6 on CIQC. And myself Sunday nights on CFMB. That's a good plug for everybody.
And don't
Thanks,
forget these
gentlemen.
people.
Oh, and don't forget the starter people. Great stuff. Sport Buff, thanks a lot. We'll catch you next time on the Sports Hot Seat.
Sports Hot Seat is brought to you in part by Sport Buff in Place Alexis Neon, where you'll find the entire line of starter sportswear.